Chapter 1: The Poisoned Soup. Actually, I had known for days that Zoe was going to poison me, but when she walked over with that bowl of soup laced with deadly potassium cyanide, I still praised her cooking skills and drank it all in one gulp. She reached out to take the bowl back, but I didn't let her. I just looked at her and asked, "Do you believe that I'm the one who loves you the most in this world?" Zoe's attention was only on the bowl. She wanted to destroy the evidence. "Of course I do. Now give me the bowl. I need to wash it." I still didn't hand it over, and asked again, "You do realize how naive you are, right? How easy it is to fool you." The moment I brought that up, her mood shifted. "Oh, here we go again. You're saying I'm dumb, aren't you? Fine. You're the smart one. I'm the idiot. Happy now?" She snatched the bowl from my hands and stormed into the kitchen, muttering under her breath, "Since you're so smart, why don't you just die already?" I gave a bitter smile. I really didn't know when she started hating me this much. Maybe it was all those times she got deceived and I nagged her afterward. I sighed and went into the bedroom to tidy things up a bit. When I came out, Zoe was in the kitchen typing on her phone. She turned around and saw me. Her expression was clearly flustered. She shoved her phone into her pocket and forced a smile. "Aren't you going to rest a bit?" I pulled out a plain-looking glass bottle and said, "Cyanide is pretty effective for killing, but it's way too easy to trace. He wants you in prison. He doesn't truly want to be with you." Zoe looked completely panicked. What are you talking about? Cyanide? I don't know anything about that. That wasn't me. I'm not trying to expose you. I just want you to see how malicious he really is. Stop letting people take advantage of you." Her expression turned ice cold. "I don't know what you're talking about. You're always saying people are tricking me. You're crazy." I knew she hated hearing that. She always thought she was clever, and that those past mistakes were just bad luck. I also knew no matter how much I said, it was pointless. She wouldn't believe me. It would only strengthen her determination to kill me. I carefully wiped the bottle with a wet tissue and said, "There, no fingerprints of yours on it anymore. Only mine." "What do you mean by that?" Zoe stared at me, confused and suspicious. I didn't explain. I just handed her a key and said, "When you hit rock bottom, open locker number 11 in the community delivery station. There's a letter I left for you inside." Zoe glanced at the key, completely uninterested. She scoffed. "Who even writes letters these days? So lame." With that, she walked into the bedroom and slammed the door. I sighed, placed the key on the coffee table, and sat down on the couch, waiting for death to come. The truth was, she didn't need to poison me at all. I was diagnosed with terminal cancer half a year ago. I only had days left to live. Rather than dying in agony from the illness, I preferred to die by her hand. Maybe it was some kind of twisted sense of dignity. At the very least, dying this way gave my end some kind of meaning. Within minutes, the effects kicked in. She had used far more poison than I expected. The reaction was intense. In just a few hours, I was already nauseous, vomiting, and my limbs were twitching. Hearing the sound of me throwing up, Zoe came out of the bedroom with her phone in hand. I was on the floor, heaving violently, nearly vomiting blood. She stood there, motionless, with a hint of satisfaction in her eyes, as if she was savoring victory. When I looked up at her, she finally put on a fake concerned expression and asked, "Are you okay?" Chapter 2: The Handwritten Letter. "I'm fine." I shook my head, forcing myself to endure the burning pain that consumed my whole body, and reminded her. I left the key to the delivery locker on the coffee table. "Don't forget it." "Yeah, I know." Zoe still stood by the bedroom door, not moving an inch. 10 minutes later, I was lying on the floor, convulsing uncontrollably, barely able to breathe. Only then did Zoe walk over. She no longer pretended to care, her face twisted with disdain. "You always said I was gullible, easy to fool, and now what? You're so smart, but you're still dying, aren't you?" I could no longer respond. I barely opened my mouth and whispered, "I love you." Maybe she heard it, maybe she didn't. Either way, it didn't change a thing. As I neared death, I shakily pulled a piece of paper from my pocket. Zoe glanced down at it, and her eyes immediately lit up. She snatched the paper, read it for a long moment, then gave me a smug little kick. "At least you had a bit of conscience left. You fool, claiming you had terminal cancer, couldn't take the pain anymore, and poisoned yourself. Now I don't even need to come up with an excuse, with no more need to pretend." Zoe called her lover, Oliver. "He's almost dead. You can come over now." Not long after, Oliver arrived. He frowned at the sight of my blackened lips and fingernails. Zoe, overjoyed, wrapped her arms around him. "Look, he's really dead now. We can finally be together openly." But Oliver let out a long sigh. "You gave him too much. The symptoms are way too obvious. The police will definitely investigate." "Huh? I followed your instructions exactly. Maybe I accidentally added too much." "Yeah, obviously you did. Relax. It's fine." He left a suicide note. "It says he was in the final stages of cancer and couldn't take the pain anymore. It clears us completely. Even the bottle that held the cyanide, He wiped it clean. No fingerprints of mine on it. Oliver looked surprised. He took the letter and examined it carefully, confirming it was indeed written in my handwriting. A smile of satisfaction appeared on his face, though his eyes briefly betrayed a flicker of disappointment. Damn bastard, he thought to himself, even after dying. You're still stirring up trouble. Wouldn't it have been easier if the poisoner just took the blame? But he didn't say any of that out loud. Instead, he looked at Zoe, still frowning. Even with the note clearing you, the cops are definitely going to investigate. You'll probably be detained for a few days at least, but don't worry, it's just standard procedure. Of course, they've got no evidence anyway. Still, it pisses me off. Just because of this dead guy, I'll have to sit in a cell for a few days. So annoying. Zoe looked truly upset. Like being locked up for a few days was worse than me dying. Oliver spoke again. Before the police get here, you should transfer all your assets into my name. Huh? Why? Zoe finally sounded a little suspicious. Oliver put on a serious face. Are you dumb? He's dead now. Do you really think his relatives won't try to cause trouble? If you're detained, they could swoop in and take everything. We're not married yet, so I'd have no legal reason to stop them. Oh, right. I didn't think of that. With the kind of family he has, they'd totally do something like that. Zoe's suspicion vanished completely in an instant. She looked at Oliver with admiration, praising him. You're so thoughtful. I never think that far ahead. I'm not thoughtful, I'm just thinking about our future. Oliver wrapped his arm around her, whispering sweet dreams of the life they'd share together. Chapter 3, No Contact. Zoe nestled in Oliver's arms, full of dreams for the future. She felt she had finally met a man who truly understood her, accepted her, and cherished her, unlike me, who only ever nagged that she was too naive. Looking down at the corpse on the floor, Zoe scoffed. Just watch. Without you, I'll only be happier. Afterward, Zoe transferred all her assets to Oliver's name. Oliver even deliberately waited a few more days, until the body began to reek, before telling Zoe to call the police. Just as Oliver predicted, despite the suicide note stating I had poisoned myself due to terminal cancer, the police still temporarily detained Zoe. The time of death was too far back, it was hard not to be suspicious, but since there was no evidence, she was released in less than a day. When she got out, it happened to be the 7th day after my death, a traditional day to mourn. But the house was already in Oliver's name, and my relatives had no place to set up a memorial. In the end, they had no choice but to rent a small corner at the crematorium. One of my relatives called Zoe, asking her to come burn offerings for the 7th day, and also wanting to understand what had happened, why I would suddenly commit suicide. Zoe answered the call and immediately snapped. He killed himself. What's that got to do with me? Stop asking me about everything. If you think something's wrong, go ask the police. And don't ever call me again. I have nothing to do with your family anymore. Honestly, meeting him, and all of you, was the worst thing that ever happened to me. After hanging up, Zoe felt refreshed. She started humming and called Oliver, asking her future husband to come pick her up, but the call went unanswered. She thought he was probably busy and tried again later. Still no answer. After several tries with no response, she angrily hailed a cab and headed straight to Oliver's place. On the way up, she was fuming. When I see him, I'm going to kick him hard. He knew I was getting out today and didn't even come pick me up. So rude. Still, the thought of finally being able to be with Oliver openly, sleeping in his bed, curled up in his arms, maybe even having a baby with him, brought a smile to her face. When she reached his door, Zoe knocked. The door opened quickly, but it wasn't Oliver who answered. It was a middle-aged man she didn't recognize. Inside the apartment, loud construction noise rumbled. Who are you? The man asked, puzzled. Is Oliver home? You guys must be from the renovation crew. Right. He must be trying to surprise me, remodeling the place before we get married. The man gave her a strange look. This place is being renovated. Yes, but I'm not from any renovation company. I'm the new owner. Oliver sold me the apartment 2 days ago. Didn't he tell you? Zoe froze. Sold. She didn't think too much of it. I still have my own apartment. She told herself. Maybe Oliver was just trying to consolidate finances for our future. Still, shouldn't he have at least told her? Even if it wasn't technically shared property. When you love someone, shouldn't you discuss these things? Zoe was a little annoyed. She pulled out her phone and called Oliver again. No answer. Fuming, she went downstairs and headed toward their other place. But when she got there, she saw people moving furniture out. Zoe's heart leapt. He's here. She rushed forward to enter the house, but someone blocked her way. Chapter 4, Disappearance. A middle-aged woman looked at her and asked, "Who are you? What do you want?" "What do I want? This is my house. I should be asking you what you're doing here." The woman frowned in confusion. "Your house? I just bought this place. You must have the wrong address." Zoe was momentarily stunned. Just bought? From who? From the owner. Of course, his name was Oliver. I think. Zoe was speechless. This house was sold too. She refused to believe it and began making a scene outside the door, but the woman showed her the title deed, fully transferred and filed through official channels. It was useless. Zoe had no claim anymore. In the end, she had no choice but to call the police. When the officers arrived, it didn't take long for them to understand the situation. One of them said to Zoe, "Regardless of what your relationship to this property was before, the documents are fully in order. It was legally purchased through the Housing Bureau. If you want answers, you should go find Oliver. But don't keep making trouble here, otherwise, we'll have to take you in." Zoe stopped yelling, but she didn't leave either. She squatted on the ground, wiping away tears, while continuing to call Oliver over and over again. She kept calling until her phone battery was almost dead, but still, he didn't answer. The middle-aged woman seemed to realize something. "Miss, could it be you've been scammed? Think carefully. Aside from the properties, is there anything else that's in his name? You'd better check before it's all gone." "No way. He was going to marry me. Why would he scam me?" Zoe jumped up and shouted. The woman stepped back, startled. "I didn't say he definitely scammed you. Just giving you a kind reminder." "Reminder? My ass. You just can't stand seeing other people happy." Zoe yelled as she opened her banking app. "Just watch. All of his money was stored in my account. There's no way he tricked me." But once she logged in, the balance showed a glaring, cold zero. Zoe thought she must be seeing it wrong. She rubbed her eyes hard, double-checked the card number, and stared at the screen for a long time before finally accepting the truth. Her account had been drained. A police officer walked over, glanced at the screen, and said, "Check the transaction history." Zoe quickly did. The records showed that 2 days ago, the entire balance had been transferred to an unknown account. The officer's expression turned serious. "You might be a victim of fraud. Please come with us to the station to file a report." "No, that's impossible." "Wait, I still have a car. It's worth hundreds of thousands. It must still be there." Without listening further, Zoe bolted to the DMV to check the car's registration. There she learned that the car, registered under Oliver's name, had already been sold to a second-hand dealership. Zoe rushed to the dealer but was thrown out. They'd paid for the vehicle legally, with all the proper paperwork. There was no reason to give it back. Zoe sat on the sidewalk, sobbing and wailing, but it was no use. She finally realized that all of her assets had been transferred. Nothing was in her name anymore, not even in Oliver's. Clinging to her last hope, she filed a report with the police. The officers accompanied her back to the original house for further investigation. The middle-aged woman, feeling sorry for her, said, "Most of the stuff here was sold to a junk collector, but I kept a box of things, some keys, photos, little odds and ends, just in case someone came back for them." Zoe clutched the box in her arms, her face hollow with despair. She had nothing left, not a penny, not a roof over her head. In this kind of situation, even the police couldn't help much. They advised her to contact anyone who might know Oliver and to report any leads immediately. Chapter 5, Lawyer Oscar. Zoe sat on a bench in the neighborhood, holding her phone, but couldn't bring herself to dial a single number. It was only now that she realized she didn't actually know anyone around Oliver. He had talked about this relative, that friend, but she had never met a single one of them. Had she really been scammed? That wasn't a question anymore. It was a fact. Just then, a delivery guy pulled up on his electric scooter. He glanced at her and said, "MS, Zoe. Right. I think you've got a package in locker number 11. It's been sitting there for days. If you don't pick it up soon, there'll be a fee." Zoe looked up at him, and only then remembered the key I had given her before I died. I told her, "If you ever hit rock bottom, open locker number 11. Inside was a letter. But she thought to herself, what use was a letter now? What could it possibly say that would matter? In a daze, Zoe walked over, opened the locker, tore open the envelope, and pulled out the letter. As she unfolded the paper, a bank card slipped out and fell to the ground. She picked it up, confused, and turned her eyes to the letter. "My dear wife, if you're reading this, it means you finally realized you've been scammed again. That card you're holding was opened secretly by me. There's 300,000 yuan in it. Use it wisely. It's the last time I can ever quietly save money for you." Zoe's hands began to tremble. She remembered how I always hesitated when spending money, how my salary never seemed to be as much as she expected. She had suspected I was having an affair, even hired a private investigator to look into it, but of course, they found nothing. Only now did she understand. I wasn't cheating on her. I had been quietly saving money, putting it away, just to leave her one final safety net. No. You couldn't have thought this far ahead for me. Zoe stared at the letter, disbelieving. But when she ran to check the card at an ATM, the screen confirmed it, 300,000 yuan. Her whole body trembled as she hurried back to the letter and continued reading. "If I were him, I'd transfer all your assets into my name and vanish the moment everything's settled. If I guessed right, by now you've lost not only your cash, but your house and your car too. Don't panic. Go to the law office and look for a lawyer named Oscar. I left a notarized document with him, a property that was never transferred out of my name. He'll help you put it under your name. But please, don't ever transfer it to anyone else again. I won't be around to help you next time. After all, I'm already dead. At the law firm, lawyer Oscar slid a stack of notarized documents across the table to her. This is the paperwork Mr. Ning asked me to prepare, a non-registered property. All it needs is your signature, and it will legally belong to you. I heard Mr. Ning passed away from cyanide poisoning. Such a shame. A man like that, he must have been under a lot of pressure. Zoe stared at the legal documents in a daze. From having nothing to having cash, a home, a place to belong. Just moments ago, she had hit rock bottom, and now, as if the clouds had parted, the path forward was clear again. But none of this came from Oliver, the man she believed was her true love. No, it came from the very man she hated enough to poison her husband. Zoe's body trembled. She clutched the letter tightly in her hands, muttering something under her breath. Lawyer Oscar couldn't make it out and had to lean in closer. "MS, Zoe, are you saying something? Do you not understand part of the process?" Then he finally heard her. Why didn't you tell me you did all this sooner?" Chapter 6, Help Me Find Him. Lawyer Oscar was silent for a moment, then said, "Actually, besides the property, Mr. Ning also gave me 50,000 yuan as a consulting fee, prepaid on your behalf. He asked that before making any important decisions in the future, you come to me for advice. To be honest, 50,000 barely covers a few hours of my time." But when he said he was about to die, I couldn't bring myself to refuse. Zoe looked up at him, her eyes already beginning to redden. She didn't speak. Instead, she picked up the letter and kept reading. "My dearest wife, I know you never liked when I called you that, but to me, you will always be the woman I love most. In the days without me, please learn to take care of yourself. If you ever decide to remarry, marry a chef. You're always dieting and skipping meals. Maybe someone with real cooking skills can help you eat better and stay healthy. Or maybe a piano teacher. You love piano music. And even though I practiced for so long, I could only manage a clumsy version of A Search for Dry and Dry. Or even a pet shop owner. You adore animals but hate cleaning. He could make your life a lot easier. In short, find someone who suits your heart's desire. But please, never fall for someone like me again. Because aside from loving you, I wasn't good for much. Maybe it's for the best that you insisted we never have children. At least now, there's nothing tying you down. So go on, without me. I know you'll be happier." Tears dripped onto the letter, soaking into the paper and smudging the ink. Oscar didn't know what the letter said. Out of professional courtesy, he hadn't peeked. He simply pulled 2 tissues from the box and handed them to her. "The dead don't return. MS, Zoe. But from what I can see, Mr. Ning truly loved you. No matter what happens next, at least once in your life, someone loved you with all his heart." Zoe couldn't hold it in anymore. She broke down sobbing. She remembered so much. That time he dragged her, beaming with excitement, into a fancy restaurant and played A Search for Dry and Dry so awkwardly on the piano. She had found it utterly humiliating and shouted at him before storming out. What must he have felt then? Maybe just disappointed. She remembered how, no matter how busy he was, he always woke up early to make her breakfast, 7 or 8 different dishes, just in case there was something she didn't like. Even though she often slept in until noon and never ate a single bite, he never stopped doing it. He'd beg her gently to eat more, say she was too thin, while she just snapped that he didn't understand how women wanted to stay beautiful, nagging like an old man. And then there were the pets, the housework, the laundry and mopping. Every holiday, he'd go with her to visit her family, but not once did they ever spend New Year's Eve at his. Zoe, drenched in tears, looked at lawyer Oscar and cried out, "I never did anything for him. Nothing. Not a single thing." Oscar sighed. He knew words were meaningless now. He just slid the tissue box closer to her. After crying until her eyes dried out, Zoe finally calmed down. Suddenly, she asked, "Lawyer, can you help me find someone?" "Who?" "A man named Oliver." Zoe pulled the bank card from her pocket and placed it on the desk. "There's 300,000 yuan in this account. And this house too. If you can find him, they're yours." Oscar raised an eyebrow slightly. "Can you tell me who he is to you? Or, what you want with him?" "I want to ask him why he lied to me." Chapter 7, Confession. "I see." Lawyer Oscar picked up the bank card. "Then give me any information you have on him. I'll use all my resources to try and find him. It's not 100% guaranteed, but as long as he's not dead, there's a decent chance we'll track him down." Zoe said nothing more. She stood up without even glancing at the notarized documents. Instead, she carefully folded the envelope, placed it gently into her pocket, and covered it with her hand as she walked out of the office. She hailed a cab and headed to the funeral home. Inside the hall, a small memorial altar had been set up. A few relatives stood or sat nearby, keeping vigil. Because of how suddenly I died, no one had notified many others. Southwest the place felt cold and quiet. Zoe's arrival shocked the relatives, and also made them furious. It's been 7 days since he died and you didn't even show your face. You cursed at us when we called. What are you doing here now? Her second uncle barked at her, face flushed with anger. I'm sorry, I was wrong, Zoe said, lowering her head. I want to light some incense for him. No need for your fake sympathy. You're just afraid people will gossip. For him to marry a woman like you must have been the worst luck of his life. I bet that cancer thing was a lie too. Maybe you killed him. Zoe kept her head down. She didn't argue, nor did she admit anything. Some softer-hearted relatives, likely out of consideration for me, decided to let her be. Zoe slowly approached the urn, staring at the smiling face in the framed photo. It took her back to the early days of our marriage. Back then, life had been joyful, warm, the two of us dreaming about the future together, side by side. But after she was scammed a few times and suffered major losses, everything had begun to sour. The pressure grew, the mood darkened. With the relatives watching, Zoe knelt before the altar. She bowed her head again and again. Thump, thump, the sound echoing through the quiet hall. Everyone was stunned. They had thought she was cold and heartless. No one expected this. I'm sorry. I was wrong. You were right. I was the fool. I'm sorry. She repeated those words again and again until her forehead split open from the force, blood mixing with her tears, dripping freely down her face. The relatives rushed to stop her, dragging her up. When they saw Zoe's face, covered in blood and tears, they were all taken aback. She pushed them away, then bowed again toward the relatives, slamming her head into the ground with each kneel, sobbing as she confessed. Even her second uncle, who hated her most, was speechless. He could only mutter with a stiff neck. Well, if you felt this way, then what were you doing before? You said you wanted nothing to do with us. Humph. Zoe still didn't try to explain. She simply asked for mourning clothes and draped herself in sackcloth, then knelt down by the altar to keep vigil and burn offerings. Seeing how genuinely remorseful she was, the relatives no longer gave her a hard time. The next day, when the ashes were buried, Zoe scattered the final handful of dirt and didn't leave with the others. She simply sat there, staring at the headstone, tears falling from time to time. A few days later, lawyer Oscar called. He had found him, Oliver. Turns out, Oliver's identity was fake. He had forged his documents, and all the assets Zoe transferred to him had been rerouted to another alias, and then transferred again to his real wife and kids. Oscar had used all his connections to finally track him down, but according to what he said, the money was already gone, spent. Not a cent could be returned. Anyone with half a brain could tell that was a lie. Oliver had no intention of giving anything back. That's fine, Zoe said. I just want to see him one more time. Please help me arrange a meeting. Just say I want to talk privately. But there's one condition. He has to bring his wife and kids with him. Chapter 8, Questions. That's not a problem, said Oscar. I'm sure he'll be happy to settle this privately. But personally, I'd still recommend you report him and press charges. Even if you can't get the money back, at least he'd do some time in prison. No need, Zoe replied flatly. Jail doesn't punish people like him. It's meaningless. Oscar didn't push it. As a lawyer, he could give advice, but he couldn't make decisions for his client. A day later, Zoe met Oliver again in a hotel room. To be more accurate, it was a reunion with his entire family. Oliver showed no signs of embarrassment. His wife was a plump woman, and their 2 children, a boy and a girl, looked about 7 or 8. They walked into the room without a hint of awkwardness. The kids immediately jumped onto the bed and began playing as if they owned the place. Shoes still on, they quickly dirted the clean white sheets. The plump woman stared at Zoe, waiting for her to scold the kids, just so she'd have an excuse to pick a fight. She'd clearly done this kind of thing before. Starting a conflict gave her the upper hand. It would throw everything into chaos, but Zoe didn't even glance at them. She simply pointed to a few bottles of drinks on the table. What do you want to drink? Help yourselves. The 2 kids jumped off the bed and each grabbed a bottle of fruity milk, then even handed one to their mother. The plump woman glared at Zoe with a provocative smirk, twisted the cap off, took a few sips, and then spat it out. Ugh. Disgusting. No taste. What kind of palate do you even have? Zoe still ignored her. She poured a cup of tea, walked over, and handed it to Oliver. You like Longjing tea? This should be real, right? Oliver accepted the cup, drank it all in one go, and said, just say what you want to say. Let's get this over with. I'm telling you now, I don't have a single penny. Zoe took the empty cup from his hand and placed it back on the table. I'm not here to ask for money. I just want to ask a few questions. Go ahead. First question, were you planning to scam me from the very first day we met? Oliver didn't answer right away, but his wife rolled her eyes and snapped. Isn't that obvious? You think he was gonna marry you for love? I wasn't asking you, Zoe said. If I have questions for you later, I'll let you know. Watch your tone. Believe me, I'll slap that smug look right off your face. Enough. Oliver cut in. Let her ask. We're here to settle things. No need to go overboard and back ourselves into a corner. Go ahead, he said to Zoe. You still haven't answered my first question. Oliver looked at her and said calmly. That's right. From the very beginning, that was the plan. Zoe gave a small nod. Her face, which had been stiff the whole time, showed a faint trace of relief. She took a deep breath, calmed herself, and asked the second question. When you asked me to poison him, your goal was to get me locked up, ideally on death row, wasn't it? Oliver hesitated for a moment, then said, I never told you to poison anyone. Don't try to pin that on me. His eyes darted around the room, scanning the corners. Zoe caught his meaning. Relax. There are no cameras here, no hidden recordings. If I wanted to drag you down, I could have gone straight to the police. Her logic was sound, but Oliver was experienced in shady dealings. He knew better than to leave any evidence behind. No matter how she asked, he wouldn't admit to instigating the poisoning. But Zoe didn't push further. His evasion had already given her the answer she needed. Third question, she said, pausing as she looked him in the eye. Do you feel even a shred of guilt toward me? Chapter 9, Murder. No. Oliver shook his head without the slightest hesitation. He knew better than to give someone like Zoe even a sliver of hope. He dealt with women who would cling on like leeches if he did. Zoe's expression twisted with bitterness. The plump woman, seeing this, smirked triumphantly. Women like you, there's a dime a dozen. You really thought you were some goddess, that every man would fall head over heels for you. Please, you were dumb. Don't blame anyone else. Zoe turned to look at her and nodded. You're right, I was dumb. There was only one man in this world who ever loved me with his whole heart, and I killed him, with my own hands. Done with your questions, Oliver said impatiently. Good. So how do you want to settle this? Zoe didn't answer. She walked past them and quietly locked the door. Oliver immediately felt something was wrong. Why are you locking the door? He asked, stepping forward, but collapsed to the ground before he could take a second step. Zoe turned to him, expression cold. I had someone source this drug specially. After you ingest it, your whole body goes numb within 1 minute. What are you trying to do? Oliver stammered, panic in his eyes. What I'm doing is very simple. Zoe pushed the plump woman aside. Her body was already paralyzed, unable to resist, and she fell, cracking her head on the corner of the table, blood spilling instantly. Zoe didn't even glance her way. She opened a drawer, pulled out a sharp knife, and crouched down in front of Oliver. The blade gleamed inches from his face. Oliver's entire body trembled. Don't do this. Let's talk. Everything's negotiable. He raised his voice deliberately, hoping someone in the next room would hear. Zoe spoke calmly. Stop yelling. This hotel has the best soundproofing in the city. Don't you remember? You brought me here once and said we could scream as loud as we wanted. No one would hear a thing. Oliver's face twisted in fear. I'll give you money. I didn't spend it all. There's plenty left. How much do you want? I'll give it to you. Money. Zoe tilted her head slightly, then drove the knife straight into his stomach. You were with me for money, but I wasn't with you for that. I wanted a man who loved me completely, and I had one. But you destroyed him. With every sentence, she plunged the knife again, and again, over a dozen times. The blade sank into flesh. Blood splattered across the floor. The air filled with the stench of death. The plump woman and the 2 children stared in silent horror. If they could move, they would have curled into the farthest corner possible. Oliver began coughing up blood, his life draining fast. He never imagined that the seemingly delicate Zoe would actually kill someone. But the truth was, Zoe had planned this long before. She had slipped the drug into the tea, and even injected the drinks with a paralyzing agent. As Oliver finally lay still, breathless, Zoe's entire body was soaked in blood. She yanked the knife from his corpse and turned toward the plump woman. Chapter 10, No Right or Wrong Ending. The woman had already wet herself. Yellow liquid spread beneath her, pooling on the floor. Zoe's face twisted into something monstrous. Now it's your turn to answer some questions. You married a man like that. Did it make you happy? Happy? No, not happy. The woman shook her head furiously, denying everything. But Zoe wasn't here to let her go. The knife plunged into her stomach. If you weren't happy, why did you stay with him? Another stab. If you weren't happy, why didn't you stop him when he did terrible things? Another. If you weren't happy, why did you barge in and yell at me the moment you arrived? Another. If you weren't happy, why didn't you just die? Each question came with another blow. The woman died quickly, her eyes wide open. This time, her usual forceful attitude had met someone more ruthless. Then, Zoe turned to the 2 children. Her eyes were like ice. Now it's your turn. With parents like those, are you happy? The kids were terrified. They shook their heads, then nodded, not knowing what to say. They were too scared to even think. No one, especially children, can face death without fear. But Zoe didn't kill them. Children, even bad ones, are still innocent. They were simply raised in a toxic environment. Remember what happened here today. When you do something evil, you pay for it. You might get away once or twice, but one day, you won't. And that's the day you die. Zoe dropped the knife and walked out. The children's cries echoed down the hall. Curious guests peeked in, only to scream when they saw the blood, the bodies. Murder. Call the police. By the time police arrived, Zoe was already sitting in the interrogation room, handcuffed. She had turned herself in, admitted to poisoning her husband, and killing Oliver and his wife afterward. The officers were stunned. This frail-looking woman had killed 3 people. In the courtroom later, when the judge asked if she had anything to say, Zoe made 2 requests. First, to be sentenced to death, to repay her husband's life with her own. Second, to be allowed to die holding the letter he left her. She hoped, maybe in hell, she'd get the chance to say sorry. The verdict wasn't hers to decide, but the murders were brutal, the motive clear. The judge sentenced her to death, by lethal injection. Her final request was granted. When the injection began, Zoe gripped the letter tightly. It was stained with blood, with tears, with all her remorse. The story made headlines across the city. Of course, lawyer Oscar saw it too. One of his colleagues sighed. At least she showed remorse in the end. Maybe she wasn't all bad. Oscar was quiet for a moment. Are you sure it was remorse? What else could it be? The colleague asked, puzzled. Oscar shook his head, sighing softly. Zoe will never know. The one who understood her best was her husband. A man dying from terminal cancer used that understanding to kill the person who wanted him dead. Tell me, was he good, or bad? The colleague stared in shock. You mean? Mr. Ning was the one who... I didn't say anything. Oscar cut him off. He stood up, walked to the window, and looked out at the endless stream of traffic. Good or bad, who can really say? Right.